let me just show you this. I don't know if this. I'm getting. I have a reaction to the. I have a physical reaction to when I see a tweet by Bernie Sanders or something about him saying what we have to do, what needs to be done, because he won't do one thing to make it happen. He won't challenge Chuck Schumer. He won't challenge Nancy Pelosi. He won't call out the Democratic Party, which is engineering the screwing of the workers right now. He won't do it. And in fact, he votes for it. And so when I see this, when I see a tweet from Bernie that says, Senator Bernie Sanders, let's fight to protect the Postal Service. Let us make sure that the U.S. Congress does the right thing. Yeah, they haven't so far, but the third, fourth, fifth, or maybe the sixth time has got to be the charm. Am I right, Bernie? Maybe that. So that drives me. It's like Bernie is a cartoon now. This is a cartoon. You bring out the cartoon. We better do the right thing. That's cute. Go back. It is a cartoon. Hey, America, how do you like my pep talk before we give everything to the banks again? He's voting for this stuff. What do you make of this, Dan? Does it bother you as much as it bothers me? Because, oh my God, does it drive me crazy?
It should be infuriating. And what I think about it is the late founder and managing editor of Black Agenda Report, Bruce Dixon, called Bernie Sanders a sheepdog in 2015 when he was first running, a sheepdog for the Democratic Party. And that's exactly what he is showing right now, is that, yeah, he'll come out when an issue arises and talk about how we need to fight for the postal workers, or we need to stand up to Trump, or we need to pass a more progressive stimulus. But then he does nothing about it. And the only fallback to all of that, to that inaction, is to support the Democratic Party as it stands right now. And that
is nuts.
Yeah, exactly. Not only is that nuts, but it just reveals what Howard Zinn said a long time ago, that you can't be neutral on a moving train. Yes. And Bernie Sanders attempts over and over and over again to be neutral, to flank to the left, and then come back and say, we got to defeat the most dangerous president in modern American history. What does that even mean? I mean, that doesn't mean anything.
Anything. It means nothing.
It means nothing. Donald Trump is a symptom of a larger crisis. That crisis is the legitimacy crisis of the two-party system that allowed a political vacuum to emerge, that allowed someone like Donald Trump to win an election, to steamroll the Republican Party, and then to completely annihilate the legitimacy of the Democratic Party by taking any position that he wants because the Democratic Party stands for nothing other than supporting their corporate masters. And of course, they can't say that like he can.
So he says, show this again. He says, we got to make sure Congress does the right thing. And when they don't, we'll talk about it afterwards in a really concerned tone. And then we'll move on to the next thing Congress isn't doing correctly, and I'll talk about it in a concerned tone. And I'll never, ever put a hold on a bill. I'll never, ever call out the leadership. I'll never make the country aware of what's happening to them before I let the bill. I'll do absolutely nothing except flap my gums on a video that's lit like a creature feature. This is like a scary movie. I don't know. He's still, somebody at his house still can't get a flashlight and point it at his goddamn head. It's amazing. Hey, but can you make him look like a scary monster from a scary movie? Oh, sure, we could do that. We could do that every fucking time, by the way. Every time. So it's, to me, that's all this is. This is just him. This is, I'm going to be here. It's like he's like a mascot. It's like he's the mascot of like, okay, the Democrats are doing something shitty. Go out and say it's the Republicans, and demand something that'll never happen, and that you will. I love that he says we have to fight. When has Bernie ever fought for anything in this campaign? Danny, when was the last thing he ever fought for?
Well, fighting to lose is not fighting at all.
Right.
That's basically what ended up happening. Is he had all the momentum and he squandered it in a lot of ways in terms of his own campaign. Didn't stand up to voter suppression that was happening in a rampant way in all these states that occurred after Nevada. He didn't do any of that. But also, when he talks about Congress needs to do the right thing, we're going to fight for it, he is Congress. I mean, he is in Congress. He is a senator. He needs to hold himself accountable to the fact that there is such a pressing need right now to address the economic crisis that working people are facing right now, that so many people are facing right now, and to do it in a way that talks about solutions and also how do you get there. He always used to talk about we need a movement, we need a movement,
Yes.
we need a movement. Well,
you got one
what
now.
does that move? Yeah, what does that movement need to do now? What is that?
What are they supposed to do?
Mass following need to do? It needs to organize, obviously, but he doesn't say that. He doesn't talk about it like that.
It's funny to see, Danny. It's funny to see guys like Bernie Sanders, who calls himself wanted to be the organizer in chief, never once give direction to his organization on what to do, except give money to charity, which is the opiate of the oligarchs. I'm gonna be the organizer in chief. We got to fight back. But don't ever do anything. He'll never mention organizing or strikes. Isn't that weird? He never mentions that we should strike, we should organize, we should do this. Just like I've seen, other progressive news shows never mention it. All they mention is voting. They never mention direct action by unions or striking. Let me throw it to you.
Voting is an acceptable means of a protest. It's not a protest at all. Voting within a two-party corporate duopoly, which is completely inherently tied to the capitalist class, which is ruining the lives of working people at home and abroad, is not organizing and it's not protesting. And so it's just so interesting that Bernie Sanders has for 4+ years now championed the New Deal as his clarion call when it took so many labor actions, strikes, so much labor organizing on the part of workers themselves to get those reforms that occurred in that period. You had Jane McClavey on. That's exactly what she talked about, that we need to begin to think about organizing in this way again. And it's much harder now. And Bernie Sanders knows this. He is close to organizers. There's no doubt about it. However, when the going gets rough, what we see the Bernie Sanders campaign do all the time is separate itself from those organizers and activists, keep them around when it's convenient, but then when there's a real crisis or when there is a need to really intensify the movement to advance the issues and the demands of his campaign, he shriveled up every time. And I think that is just a part of what it means to be a Democratic Party apparatchik.
Which is exactly what he is. It's weird. For me, it's like once I saw through the media, there was no going back. It's like once you're through the looking glass, you're like, holy shit, this is what's really going on. And then you just see it everywhere, right? And it's just the same thing that has happened with me and progressive elected politicians during this pandemic. Just the unmasking of who they are. They're just Democratic Party apparatchiks. That's exactly what they are. From Bernie to Elizabeth Warren to Ro Khanna to the Squad to Tulsi Gabbard, they're all just Democratic Party apparatchiks. It's really sad to see. Nobody's screaming about this stuff. AOC is doing some good theater. We're going to get to that. Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?